Alright guys, this is part 2 of the lesson. I want to show you an example of what examining meta-language or meta-language analysis looks like. So you can see here, and I'll read through it in a moment, that I'm comparing the use of analogy and I'm looking at the differences. So I'm saying that they both use analogy, but what's the difference in the function or the purpose of the analogy? And I'll show you what that looks like. So Birdie's mum uses the analogy of the Narendra show on page 40 in an attempt to discourage Birdie from enlisting in World War I. She reminds him of his childhood when he and his sister spent time watching the fancy circus while lounging on barbed wire like a pair of skinned rats. So you can see that the quotes are perfectly embedded. That's something that we should all be doing by now. Now, my introduction to the analogy. Wright's use of the analogy captures the illusory/deceptive nature of the dominant society and the acute level of oppression that Indigenous Australians suffer. Now I ask, what can you see in just that sentence that's missing from your analysis? I hope that it's the use of language, okay? So just subtleties, illusory, deceptive, dominant, acute, oppression. Okay, all of these words add to create a more complex essay. Similarly, now moving on. Similarly, the Agwa's protagonist, Whitechapel, uses an analogy to highlight the relationship between those who are powerful, most notably Mr. Whitechapel and Sanders Sr., over the powerless, when he suggests that what began as a single thread has woven itself into a prodigious carpet that cannot be unwoven, on page 33. Now my authorial intent statement, my analysis, the crux of what I need to get to. The analogy conveys to readers that the racism and oppression of African Americans endured at the hands of the supremacist white society were passed on through generations, much like that of the experiences of Birdie's mother. So I'm highlighting this idea that they were so that can't be unwoven, this prodigious carpet. So it's been stitched, single thread by thread, and woven. All right, so that takes time, and I'm spanning that over generations. And I also make that link back in my last line to the black diggers. Okay, I want you to have a go at this. I want you to compare the use of historical allusions or religious allusions, and write something like this. Give me the similarities. So they both use the religious allusion. I've given you the examples. You find the quotes, okay? But you need to write the authorial intent statement. That is the first task that I want you to do, okay? Once you've done that, we'll move on. Symbols. Love symbols, they occur in nearly every text that we've read since year 10, so we should have a good grasp of what a symbol is. Now, in Black Diggers and the Longest Memory, we see the idea of scars, and in the Longest Memory, wrinkles. All right? What do they represent? What are they symbolic of? We see aging. So aging isn't just about getting old. What else does it represent? What words can you associate with that? Such as experience, yeah, or even deterioration. So being chipped away at your whole life, from like Whitechapel, for example, or Birdie's mother, who has just given up on, trying to appease white culture. She tries to tell him, mate, nothing's going to change. All right. So that's the idea of experience. Darkness and light. I'm going to show you a little bit more about that, but particularly in the Black Diggers, it's very important. In the Longest Memory, we see this idea of darkness and light, particularly when Chapel is looking at the stars of Lydia. Light is so far away. What does that mean? Okay, what is that idea that light is so far away? In terms of the stars, and then even if we go back to allusions, that's a literary allusion. It's talking about the star-crossed lovers of Romeo and Juliet, Chapel and Lydia. Chapel, who is an educated, he can read. He's been reading literature. He somewhat associates himself to the star-crossed lovers, Romeo and Juliet, lovers who cannot be together. So there's a literary allusion. This image of animals, so we spoke about zoomorphism, yeah? Please don't forget that. And then, obviously, writing and reading, so this idea of education. Now, for this task, I want you, next to each of those words, come up with different ideas. So what do scars represent in the Black Diggers? What do they represent in the longest memory? What does aging represent? And there's going to be more than one answer. And if you can support that with any quotes, you will be well on your way to getting a great score, guys. But most importantly, writing a good essay. Now, what does that look like? So let's look at darkness and light. Here's some examples for you. In John's Gospel it says, "And the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehend it not," on page 62. Okay? One moment, I'll try and get that up. Sorry guys, before I did state, I think in my part 1 video, that Tommy in fact died. He didn't die, yeah? He was in a hole for 3 days and he rose like Lazarus. So that is the religious illusion. So just making a slight correction here. Yeah, and the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. This is by Archie on page 62. He writes it to Auntie May, and he asks, "What does that mean? What does it mean? The light shineth in darkness." So there was light there, light in a time of darkness. What is the light in this time of darkness, in this time of war? What can we associate with light? Is it acceptance? Is it finding out who one is? I don't know. You think about that. But he asks, and it's important, what does that mean? Maybe he doesn't know yet. So Laurie, it should say, "I like to stay in the light. Don't want to wander back in the dark," on page 87, if we quickly get that one up. So let's try and... yeah, so darkness, in this case, was the war. Alright, for Laurie. This is when he's talking to that man about the Light Horse Battalion. So he doesn't want to go back to that darkness, that reminder of the bad times. I thought you blokes could see in the dark from the second white shoulder. That's a clear reference to animals. A rabbit see in the dark, cats see in the dark. Alright, so he's comparing those of colour to animals. But then if we look at the longest memory, so when the stars I see are from a knock that recurs and the sky is close and black, always black. Alright, that's that reference to love again. So go through these guys, because I'm running out of time and I'm about to go to yard duty. But here's an example of analysis of symbols. So Wright's use of light and dark is an important symbolic device throughout the play. The play begins in darkness in 1887 as a massacre of Aboriginal tribe occurs. During the war, the darkness, if often illuminated by the striking match on page 28, or by flashes caused by bombs. Darkness and light are constantly juxtaposed in this play, sometimes ironically. There seems to be more light at the theatre of war than in Australia. Well, what's the purpose of that? Despite the violence and horror, the play ends with a return to darkness as Nigel states that he won't join Anzac celebration because he doesn't belong. So we can start to make that connection that light although fickle and quick-fired in terms of the bombs and whatnot, that's very much reflective of the belonging of Indigenous people. For a moment, they did belong within society. They come back and they're back in darkness, and we see this through Nigel. So, what I want you to do, guys, there's 3 prompts here. One is compare how the imagery of scars and wrinkles are used by the authors to represent the past. The act of reading and writing can represent power or freedom for the characters. Discuss. Or analyze how animal references are symbolic of dehumanization. What I would like you to do is construct a paragraph, much like the one above, but I would prefer if you created a comparative paragraph. So like this one here, text A, text B, and compare and contrast for one of these prompts. Okay, I'll expect that, and the other task to be submitted to me at the end of, on Tuesday, I think we have lesson. If you have any questions, guys, please just send me an email and I'll be more than happy to help. Come next week, we've got a lot of notes. We've done all the work. We just need to start writing. So please be ready for that.